Hello, everyone. It's so good to see everybody in the space. And just to recap, I see so many familiar faces and some new ones. Hey, guys, it's so great to see you. Always a pleasure. And Anna, thank you again for holding such a great space. We did have
Oh,
such a
thank you.
last week, and so I'm looking forward to getting into it and having some discussion around it. So, I don't, just to recap, in my intentional healing journey, well, actually before that, because it was very interesting. I remember wearing back boldly the superwoman, trope. I mean, being a strong woman, being a strong black woman, being a shero, having people call me a shero, and owning it, right? I mean,
Mhm.
and y'all thought I was playing last week, but I was so serious. When I would be driving my vehicle, that theme song, I would be playing like humming it. My kids would hum it too.
That's awesome.
Possible, right? Because we had to make it happen. And during that time, I didn't realize and understand or even make the connection that it wasn't until I had nothing left to give, until my body gave out, until I was, about to just completely be drained of everything and couldn't do anything, that is what was honored. It was like, oh my gosh, you do so much for everybody. Oh my goodness, and after a while it just started to click, like, this doesn't work. This isn't healthy. This isn't healing. It is overwhelming at times, and all the things that I was doing to show up and be that hero every day as much as possible, and the things that people, especially a lot of the women around me, had shown were not helpful in healing either. And being a lover of superheroes, of pow pow, beat 'em up, let's go get 'em, I started to look at some of the things that actual superheroes that we have in the comics have in common with some of these very unhealthy things that we do as well. And why maybe it's not the best idea, at least not the most healing idea, to kind of correlate ourselves with that as we're leaning into intentional healing. So I have about 16 cost of the cape here. And um, we'll start, I'll just recap them and then we'll get into discussion. The first one is, and I put them in the chat for those of you just hopping in. The first one is that they usually have a traumatic origin story that they refuse to deal with. And that refuse is not that they never, ever, ever, ever deal with it, but usually we see it kind of on a surface level, to be a little bit of dealing, but then a whole lot of, denial. Um, Number two, they never experience lasting peace. It's always the next thing, the next thing. Number three, they have terrible personal relationships. Like their personal relationships are just not good. Um, number Number four, um, they keep the ones they love at an emotional safe distance. Usually under the guise of protecting their loved ones or their friends, family, what have you. But more often than not, it's actually protecting themselves. um, they save the world and leave themselves to drown. And we see that all the time. They sacrifice all and suffer in silence. And number seven, they often see the people they love as weak or less than, in need of saving, or rather than partners in healing. Number eight, they fight battles usually when most people haven't even asked them to fight them. They just volunteering for stuff. I'll go do it. I got it. Number nine, they dismiss the need to fellowship with the very people they are trying to save, thus reinforcing some of that isolation. Number 10, most have unresolved trauma and help people through the lens of that trauma. Number 11, their pain never matters. Number 12, they often become voluntary martyrs. Like, ain't nobody asked you to die. You just over here whole dying. Number 13, they often have others who emulate them, not truly understanding the sacrifice it takes to be them. Number 14, they keep the struggle to themselves and a small group of enablers. And as I pointed out last week, notice the word was enablers, not friends, not families, because it doesn't matter what the role was. At the end of the day, they function as enablers. Number 15, they find every reason not to rest and genuinely live in the moment, always thinking and planning for the next fight. Or, as we say down here in the South, the other shoe to drop. And number 16, love life. What's that?
Yep. Oh my God. Yep. Yes. Yes. So somebody asked in the chat, Cassandra. So it is it I just have to laugh. I'm like, I love how it was put. So they're Kelly's like, so they're codependent, right? And I'm like, really? I mean, would you say so?
I would say yes, they're codependent. And as you know, we joked last week, you know, sometimes the villains are like your extreme narcissists, right? And what do we know is on
Hmm.
the other side of narcissism? People please.
Codependency. Yeah, people pleaser 101.
Right. And so our superheroes are often the ultimate people pleasers. And if we look at that in everyday life, that often looks like your community leaders, right? Your people in ministry sometimes. A lot of people who do great service work, people who find themselves in helping fields oftentimes fall under this category. Maybe they didn't sign.
Oh my God. So I'm raising my social workers much, psychologists much. Yeah, yes, yes.
Yes,
Teachers,
yes,
police officers, firemen, firefighters. Yep.
yes. Yes. You go to that service, you are going to find some people pleasers, quite a
Hmm.
few, you know. And so with that, that does come that codependency, even if it's not necessarily in relation, which often it is. It's sometimes it's a codependency or an over how do I put it? Um, a need, that need to be fulfilled, that need to feel that purpose, like we talked about last week, that this is how I define my value. And so I have
Yes.
dependent upon what it is that I do, how I show up for others for my value while I'm depleting my own energy, while I'm depleting my own resources, while I'm sacrificing my loved ones, quality time, relationships,
Right. Yes.
and so that
Okay.
I can be the hero.
I have a question, but I want to have Drea, you had your hand up first. But I have a question about something along these lines. Drea, go ahead.
Yeah, hi Anna and Cassandra and everybody.
Hello.
Hey, I was just wondering if Cassandra could because I missed the first part of it, but if you could go more into number 1 on your list there, the traumatic origin story that they refuse to deal with.
Mhm.
When we get there, whatever, that's all. Like, you don't have to be like right this second, but yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, be happy to. Be happy to. With the number one, I'll start out using a superhero for example, right? So we know most of us have known or heard, even if you're not a comic book fan or a comic fan, period, you've heard of Batman, right? And we know that he lost his parents when he was young. Okay, they were murdered right in front of him, and he went on to eventually reinvent himself in secret to wear the Batman cape. However, through his capers and actions, he only superficially worked on his trauma. So we know he had the traumatic event, right? But over time, he only superficially worked on that trauma. There would be glimpses of understanding, glimpses of maybe paying attention to the connections from the past to that, but he would only superficially work on it. And then it was to the next trauma, it was to the to the next thing. It was never a deep dive into actually doing that intentional work. And for those of you who've heard me say over and over, it's a difference between this idea of healing or healing and this being intentional about it. And he was never ever that. He never did the deep work to go in and work on it. He continued to put the mask on, showing up with that, fighting and punching his way through instead of doing the harder choice, which was the healing.
That is, you know what, that is so true. And there are so many of us I know in this room. And I wanted to welcome Felice and Lily and Jeff and Andrea, you too, um, Lewis and Tracy and Jason and Al. So many of us can relate to this,
Mm-hmm.
because so many of us in this room, a lot of you guys come to narcissistic groups or you've had, toxic relationships. Hello, raising my hand, and that, and it's so like the people pleasing alone, and that abandonment or the fear of that rejection,
Mm-hmm.
but we do get an emotional payoff, right? I mean, to me, everything we do in life of any substance, we we get, it's almost like you get a withdrawal from your emotional ATM. We get a kickback in some way from saving somebody, or we're going to help them, or we're going to do this, or we're going to, you know, I'm going to volunteer all my time and just, work myself into an early grave, and I'm going to be a martyr, or I'm going to fix my partner. I'm going to fix this person, and so they don't leave me. They're going to see my value and they're going to stay. I mean, that alone, like I can see where so many of these traits are relate to those types of outcomes. Like, and I think, do you think that it's unconscious, or do you think at some point people see, like, oh my God, like we go into this blindly?
Hmm. I think that initially it is blindness, it is survival. And as you know, I've shared before, we don't judge the things that we had to do to survive. And so some of this armor that we're putting on, the capes that we're wearing, it's helping us survive initially, right? Because the focus on the things outside of ourselves instead of all the turmoil that's within. So it starts out as this sort of place of survival, or this almost even this place of escape, because I don't know about you guys, but when my life was flipped, turned upside down, and it was not the Fresh Prince, um, going to work had become an escape. you know, Going to school was an escape. Going and helping others was a beautiful escape from all the drama, all the things that was happening in my life. It was also a great distraction. And so while I was very much helping people and making a difference every time I walked through the door, it was a distraction from me having to sit down and be real with me. And so it didn't start off that way, of course. It started off, oh my goodness, I want to help people. Oh my gosh, I want to make a difference. But it ultimately wound up being this way of, well, let me not have to pay any attention to whatever is going on over there.
That makes so much sense. That makes so much sense. So here's the question I was going to ask, because I think it was Kelly that asked if the people are codependent. But here's the flip side of that. Do you think that some of us superheroes, that there is an element of narcissism in there? Because when they don't fellowship with people, don't fellowship with the people that they're quote unquote saving or rescuing, or we think we're too good, that these people are just idiots and they don't know how to manage their own lives. I mean, come on. Well, we all have friends and family that we look and go, you are a moron. How did you make it this far? We're gonna fix you.
Yeah.
And so, do you think that there's, on the flip side of the codependent, or the person that we're looking for validation all the time and that neediness, that maybe there's, um, Felice says no, no. You want to expand on that, Felice? And I see your hand up too, Kelly. Victim narc. Oh, interesting, you guys.
I love it. I love it. Oh, Uh, Kelly, that you're going to share? Who was that? Or Felice?
Yeah, I was just in a room earlier. It was like in support of like empaths and codependents, and the lady was reading a book, and she was like breaking down all the ways and reasons and just the ins and outs of being codependent. And one of the things she said was like all narcissists are codependent. I was like, that's interesting. And her reasoning was that um, they need like they need external, I guess, what do you call it? External validation.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously codependents need external validation too, but in a different way. You know what I mean? Like the codependents are wanting to help, and then the narcissists are wanting to take, but in that taking, it's also codependent because they're dependent on other people to feed their needs. You know what I mean? So that was really interesting that I learned.
Mm-hmm. And with that, when we think about, and thank you for sharing that. When we think about discarded by narcissists, right? The reason why it's so easy for them to discard is because that validation is no longer being met. And if they need that, and it's part of what they need, and when we're no longer giving it, it's like, okay, I have to go get the next supply. I have to go get somebody who's feeding into that, Well, thank you so much for sharing. And Felice.
Yes.
Hey Anna,
Hi.
how are you?
I'm doing
Um,
great. You guys, this is
Good.
awesome. Thank you for popping on.
Always. I've not been on in a long time, but always want to see you. I always try to
Uh,
tune in. Um, but that word could have been, it really pisses me off because, um, yes, yes, I had that narcissism in my marriage, but it wasn't me, and I didn't
uh-huh.
even know it. And gosh, I now, of course, when I think back, I'm thinking back all the time and I'm checking some of the boxes, not all of them that you said, but definitely some of them. And I view my role with my narcissistic spouse who really didn't display all those um, personalities until he lost weight. And we had talked about weight loss surgery, you and I. And
Mm-hmm.
but that ballooned, that narcissism, and then I was discarded. So for 35 years, I believe I don't call myself a codependent. I lived with somebody who was stared at, and I mean, a wonderful person at work, never said no, took care of everybody, held everybody's hands. He's in medicine. Um, but abused his own kids. Um, Not as much me, but as it went on, I of course I had to protect my kids, and that drove a wedge, and I couldn't accept the garbage that was coming in. But I protected him because he was, I don't know what that word is, that he felt not normal if I wasn't with him. So being physically different, and um, how people that are different are looked at and not with loving eyes, you feel it. And me as a wife, I felt that, and I didn't feel I needed to protect him, but I felt that as a vow that I took, that that person wasn't heavy when I married him, but when he became heavy, I did not ever change how much I loved him, but the needs changed. So we were in a different dynamic. But I don't think of myself as codependent. I did not need that. If I could have tossed it at any time, I would have. I never would have left my spouse because he was different or he changed or he he gained weight or he lost weight or he got cancer, I never would have walked out. But as soon as he changed, he left. So there is my trait. Is it codependent? That loyalty to a fault. That's how I feel. That, but I don't know what anybody else feels. And did I get off on tangent? But
well, you brought it. You didn't, because you brought it back around. But you made an interesting point, and Cassandra, maybe that's a question, too, that I have. When you're saying that, Felice, you made a really interesting comment about, when we are a spouse to somebody or we are in relation, some sort of a partner, right? Like this intimate relationship. Do you think, sometimes, Cassandra, that we end up with this label or we become a superhero because of the label that we wear? Like, I am a spouse, so therefore I'm going to be like Felice. And I'm like, this is my person. Like, I'm going to show up for them. I'm going to do back flips and front flips and squat splits and everything else, like, to make them happy. And then in doing so, we end up with a cape.
Right,
Just
right,
because of the label, Does that
right.
make
are you
sense? You know
supposed
what
to
I'm saying?
feel that cape? Do you feel the cape? I mean, do you feel above
Mm,
everyone else? Do you feel, I think the narcissist has the cape. And at least
mm.
in my experience, they feel superior.
Mm,
There's no way in my situation, that I ever felt I was a superhero. I was somebody that took a vow, for better or worse. And that is where it ends.
Mhm.
right. And so you made some good points, but consider this when we're thinking about, when we're making this comparison to our healing to the heroes and the villains, right? You're right. The villains are narcissistic. The villains have the inflated ego, the bigger, these plans. I mean, they are more. They have that about them, right? However, if we think about the heroes, you know, whether it is Batman, Superman, Spider-Man, Iron Man, Wonder Woman, you can just go down the list, right? When you think about them, while they have moments of toughness and they know what they're good at and they have that about them, they also have a lot of moments of doubting who they are, of doubting what it is that they are capable of a lot of moments of struggling with the duality of their identity, of who it is that I am, the label, the label of who I am versus who I actually am, and showing up and being loyal to the people that they care about without a fault, to a fault, to a degree, and showing up in a no matter what kind of way, t- oftentimes to their detriment in some way, form, or fashion. And so it's not because they had this inflated ego, like I am this person, boom, 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 boom. Yeah, they might have brief moments of being up on the mountaintop, but oftentimes we see our heroes go through the ups and downs and loop de loops of, trying to figure it out. So they have this love, they have this care for the people around them. And it is that love, that care, that desire to show up for others that often gets twisted and turned by
Mhm.
that narcissist or by the villain. And so
Oh, I
it's
like that.
they have the like they have the cape. But no, we wearing the cape.
She's like, nope, sorry, Felice, we're wearing the cape.
We
I've
wear
I've worn the cape. I've tried to throw away the cape. It's come back.
The only
Oh my.
mistake I did was not leave sooner
mhm,
and not see the light sooner. So I don't feel I was wearing a cape. I would have gone down. Yeah, maybe martyr gone down and stayed until
mhm,
the end.
mhm,
That is my fault. Is that I won't walk away. Um, but when ultimately, when your boundary is crossed and there's no turning back, and what has happened is irreplaceable, it's not fixable
Mm-hmm.
and will never be whole.
Mm-hmm.
That is when you make that decision and then you walk away. And you
That's
don't want to
right.
walk away. You do, not because you're wearing a cape. It's
No,
to me, it's because okay, after 35 years, this is what I have been working on, and this is what I signed up for.
Mm-hmm.
And I often said to my spouse, I loved you at any weight. And now that you're skinny, somebody fusses over you and that you look good, then you're gone. So who has the issue? Me? Okay, maybe you would see it that way.
No, and so it's not about when we're talking about the cape, and I think that that's maybe where a little disconnect is right now. When we're talking about the cape, it's not saying it's an issue, but we never fully heal from anything that we don't acknowledge, and so it's just kind of pointing out some things that we may have been responsible for, and some mindsets and ideals that we could have. And and it may not resonate with you, and that's okay. But this was something that I know very much resonated with me. A lot of the people that I've helped as well resonated with this as they took some time and did some inventory and went back. It's not to say that the narcissist or the person that's toxic, and that word toxic just meaning leading from those unhealed spaces and bleeding all over us, did not do things. They
No,
absolutely did.
I think you're right. I think you're right.
Mhm,
Over time, I've
mhm,
looked at myself, and yes, I wasn't there emotionally,
mhm.
and I didn't pick apart, and I didn't say I was unhappy, and I I'm as much my fault, and that is in 2 years of being separated. This is, of course, I've gone down that journey, and you're right that the inventory and the responsibility is shared.
Mhm. And here's the thing. There's no judgment at all, right?
no,
You
no.
don't know what you don't know until you know it, and
Right.
before you were just going through, you were surviving, you were doing what you thought you needed to do, and you were absolutely making the best decision you could at the time, you know. And now that you've had some space from it, that gives you just opportunity, space, and grace to dig a little deeper, as you're going through this intentional healing journey.
That's beautiful. And that's so true. Yes, give yourself some grace, Felice. All of you, give yourself some grace. I want to take a moment to pause. Jeff, you're next. I see you. Jeff's had his hand up. And before he changes his mind, I would love for him to share too, Cassandra, and what he has to say. And I know you have some other tips that we want to get through, but I do want to acknowledge Nikki and Bethany and Lori, Jessica and Charm and Wally and Tracy. I saw you guys all come in, Isabel and Paul. So I just want to make sure that you guys are all know that you are seen. And if it's okay, I would love for Jeff to share because I know that he goes back and forth on sharing anything. Jeff, what did you want to share tonight about his super cake?
Thanks. Well, I was just piggybacking on that current conversation because it's true. Like I do feel like I didn't just start off the relationship like, okay, I'm going to be codependent and be way too involved, and that, I guess that's kind of just the short way to put it. But yeah, no, we go into it kind of blindly and end up in loop de loops because I thought we had some sort of what was presented to me. All of a sudden, it's a different reality, and then I'm like constantly accommodate, and the next thing I know, I'm quote unquote codependent, and I don't like the way that feels. And then when I even read the material and listen to the list and stuff, I'm like, wow, that I wouldn't want to be in a relationship with that person either. And then I start to think to myself, maybe I
I
am,
love that.
you
Jeff,
know.
that's funny.
Well,
That
thank
makes
you
me
for that.
laugh.
I mean,
Thank
and
you.
then it's
No,
like,
no, thank you for the awareness. Thank you for the awareness. And but the way you said it was just, it was. I loved it. The way you
well,
put it.
honestly appreciate that. I mean, that validates me a ton right there. And then anyway, but yeah, and then the narcissists, they pull their end game tricks where they kind of couldn't care less all along, and you're like, what the hell was I doing this whole time? And so anyway, thanks for listening.
And
Oh,
thank you for sharing and being vulnerable. See, we've got you. We like when you share and are vulnerable. So thank you for being brave and doing that. And it makes sense.
absolutely.
Cassandra, any thoughts?
Yes, a few actually. You're right. Most of us are not wearing those signs that say, "Hey, I want to be codependent when I grow up."
Yeah,
That's not usually how that goes. But as we kind of talked about before, unbeknownst to us, right? Just like those narcissists are formed in childhood, a lot of times, so those people pleasers, we're formed in childhood too. We're just on the other end of the spectrum, and it doesn't show up. We don't realize it. Again, you don't know what you don't know until you know it, until it really happens or it gets to a point in our life, whether it's through the bad marriage, the bad relationship at work, the bad relationship with friends, or what have you, that some catalyst happens when you realize, oh my gosh, this is what's happened. This has gone too far. But nobody usually signs up to go, hey, this is just what I want to be. It's just something that you eventually realize when somebody kind of takes it too far, that you've leaned into people pleasing, you leaned into that codependency. And so when you look at the list, and trust, I understand, because as I was going through my intentional healing journey, there were many times that I was clutching my invisible pearls as I started to realize some of this stuff, right? Of where I'd been and what I actually, been doing. But as you are paying attention, it's like we don't like those words, codependency. We don't like the word people pleaser. And when we think of those words, and I use this as an example a lot, what do we think of when we think of those words? We think of the sniveling characters in the movies that's kissing up to everybody that nobody likes, that would, has really no real integrity about themselves other than to reach out and try to get the attention or maintain the attention of somebody or somebodies who clearly have no interest in them, right? And who wants to be associated with that visual, And that's another reason, bringing the conversation back, and a recognition that to a great degree, most superheroes, and when we say superheroes, it's a reminder that they're doing good work. They're not out here doing poor things. They're not out here trying to take advantage of people. They really are trying to help other people. They really are trying to care for their community. They really are trying to show up for their loved ones. But because they don't realize that about the people pleasing, they don't realize about the codependency, what actually winds up happening is, yes, they're doing the great work, but it's at an even greater cost to themselves. And so that's why kind of making that correlation between, okay, no, who wants to be identified with this awful person that just doesn't have their stuff together? Oh my gosh, no. It's a reminder, I think, of our humanity. It's a reminder of the growth that it takes in this healing journey once you start to recognize these things. That okay, these are definitely some areas that I need to work on. Or if you, depending on where you are in your journey, I used to really be here. I used to do this real bad, but now, because I'm learning some things, I'm getting some tools, I'm able to kind of tweak how I show up. I'm able to set those boundaries. I'm able to recognize people who are not safe, who will not respect my boundaries, and set a more steep boundary, but by maybe removing myself from their presence or removing myself from that relationship. And those are skills that you build over time. So no, Jeff, thank you so much. I do love the way that you said that. But keeping in mind, the correlation is that superheroes are doing amazing things. Many of us, we were doing amazing things while you were going through the trauma. You were doing amazing things while you were in the bad relationship. You were doing amazing things while you might have been sweeping the pain under the rug. It's not saying that we weren't. We're multifaceted individuals. We're complex, but it is a recognition that we definitely had some things to work on. And is it Calvin?
Yes, it is.
Naveen, you're on. Yay! Your mic is working this week.
It is. Hi, Anna, Cassandra.
Hi.
As Cassandra was sharing, I thought about a conversation that I actually just recently had with a coach of mine because I was sharing with him. For me, um, when I experienced that disconnect between like I know my intentions and I know that I want the best for people and I know that I'm trying to do good versus my actual like what the outcome is. Like when I just feel like life is like just smacking me in the face because I'm trying to do it all, but I know underneath that is my intentions. Like I um I'll get really down on myself. I'll put all the blame to myself because again, like there's this idea that it's all like my burden to carry. So I when I was sharing this with him, he gave me the analogy of and as Cassandra was speaking, I thought back to it. He gave me the analogy of it's like he's like, it's like somebody's knocking on your door and handing you a $20, handing you $20 just to just to go in and rob your house. So you're giving them the access for the $20, but what are you really losing? And the way that he phrased that, which I got reminded of, really resonated with me. So I just wanted to share.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you. You know, um, yeah, that is definitely something that, we can lean into, is being so down on ourselves, taking on things again that it's not even our issue, our responsibility. We don't need to take on the burden, and allowing people just to come in, whether it's emotionally, physically, financially, or what have you, and take advantage of us. Again, all in the sake of helping, but we lose so much. So thank you so much for that. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. I'm glad that you were able to share this week, Calvin. So, who else? Oh, hey, Karen and Proud. I see you, Debbie. Welcome. So, who else has some thoughts before Cassandra moves into, I don't know, Cassandra, have we even moved to number 5 yet? Don't
We
worry, you guys. We have Cassandra here for the rest of the month of December. We're going to be talking about different things as we go along the month too, as we get closer to the holidays too. But we do have her here for the whole month. But I don't even think we've moved on to number 4 or 5 yet.
No, we have not. We have not.
Okay.
Oh my gosh. And I do see in the chat, Wally, I see the sniveling.
Yes, I was dying laughing when you put that in there. Yep. But it's true because we think, oh well, these people are the sniveling, down and out in Beverly Hills, they're weak. But that's not true. Like, so many of us, that's not really an accurate description like of reality, right? We certainly I don't I would never have classified myself as that way,
Right.
but you know, um so, but it makes sense when you said it that way, Cassandra. I was like, oh yeah.
Mm. Oh yeah, yeah. And even to the point of recognizing, maybe the narcissist or that toxic individuals stuff. If we look at Mr. Glass, who was Elijah Price, and his arch enemy, which was David Dunn, when we look at that, we see that Elijah Price was born with a condition that caused his bones to break very, very easily. So he was picked on. He was found himself crippled and hurt and having to recover over and over and over again. And so there's a part of you that, at the beginning, you're just like, oh man, this sucks, right? Only to realize that, while he had been quote unquote helping, uh, and there the quote unquote, David Dunn's character to get to the place where he could recognize his strength as a hero, recognize who he was, it was all to a fault. It was all for the wrong reasons. It was to confirm his own villainy, not
Mm-hmm.
necessarily because there was actual concern for David Dunn, and we find ourselves in those positions. And when we see David Dunn at the beginning, what is he doing? He's struggling with his identity. He's struggling with the truth of who he was, a lie that he said years and years ago for the woman that he loved, denying the fact that he never got sick, that nothing has ever really happened to him, he was denying that part of himself and not leaning into strength, but instead trying to do service using a fraction of his gifts and a fraction of who he was, and still trying to hide and work that out internally. And it really left him susceptible, but again, just things that you don't realize until you realize it.
That's right. That's absolutely true.
And
Perfect. Keep going.
oh, and I wanted to say, I think was that Paul or was that Jason that asked about the list? Jason, I
Oh,
would
Jason.
in the list in the chat in a format that's a little easier. I already have it ready. I just can't go over there right now.
Yeah, I'm glad that, thank you, Jason, for bringing that up because I wanted to, last week I tried to copy it too, and it was too long of a post for some reason my phone won't capture it. I
Got you.
was so sad. I'm like, oh, I've got to like spend some time like absorbing this. This stuff is so good. This is, oh snap, you guys. I'm sorry. I just dropped my phone on the wood floor. So sorry I'm making a bunch of noise. So, okay, Cassandra, do you want to get into, we got like 10 minutes left, you guys. You want to get into like what? We're at number 4?
Yes. Let's go on down to number 4. And number 4 was they keep the ones that they love at an emotional safe distance. Okay.
Oh, I like this one.
All right. And because of the need to feel like they are constantly responsible to protect their loved ones, that kind of leans to um, what the gentleman just before just said, about taking on too much of that responsibility, right? Um, they and not burden them with their challenges. They push their loved ones to the side when they actually need them the most. When we look at some of our heroes, for example, Superman, and Superman 2, we'll just go with the movie. When he made the decision to become human for Lois Lane, one, he didn't ask her. you know,
Oh yeah, oh snap. Forgot about that.
yeah, he didn't ask her, hey, I'm thinking about doing this for us. What do you feel? He took her whole choice away. He didn't ask her, he didn't consult her before making such a life altering decision. Next, when he realized his error and he had to find a way to become Superman again, once he took her choice away again instead of allowing Lois to partner with him and be that love interest for him. Instead, he used his amnesia kiss to take away her memory of him ever being Superman, leaving him to love her from a distance and taking away that choice. It was emotionally safe for him, but it was a stolen choice for her. You know, keeping his loved one at an emotionally safe distance. Now you walking around feeling this, burden still, but they
Mhm.
don't have a choice now in how they're able to show up for you. The classic, I'm fine. I'm fine. I'm fine. No, I don't need any help. No, I got it. No, you want to show up? No, I'm good. No, don't worry about it. The things that we say to our
Mhm.
loved ones who are desperately trying to be there, or the things, better yet, that we hide from our loved ones. You know,
Yes.
And we see this especially, I know, in the dynamics of, parents too. I know the things that I tried to call myself shielding from my children, and I'm trying to help them. But what I really did, I took away their choice for opportunity for growth. I took away their choice to be able to understand the nuances and hard things. You know, again, you don't know what you don't know until you know it. But I
That's
took
right.
from them even being able to understand, the family dynamics better because of that. And so now, as they're going through their own healing journeys, they're having to work some of that stuff out, you know.
Okay. Oops. All right. I think that's just so rich. And when we take the choice away from people, I mean, we really do a disservice to people in the name of trying to do good.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it causes resentment
Mm-hmm.
when people are aware that it's it's the sabotage behavior for sure, where the thing that we want the most is what we end up pushing away the furthest.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Mhm.
Very much self sabotaging behavior, or sabotaging rather, to do that to those relationships on whatever level. And you can see this play out not only in our intimate relationships, but sometimes the people that we care about in the workplace because we spend a lot of time there. It can show
Yes.
there. It can show up in multiple ways, but we take away the choice in trying to quote unquote protect or to decide what a person can deal with and what they can't. You know, you're treating them like an object instead of like a resource.
Hmm. Oh, yeah, resource. That's a great way to put it. Hey, Molly, welcome. All right, let's go on then to number five. We got like 7 minutes left, you guys.
Okay. So for number five, and we touched a little bit on this one last week, but they save the world and leave themselves to drown. They save the world and leave themselves to drown. And we can see this with our everyday heroes. The amount of hours that, you'll see doctors have to put in and nurses have to put in and others in healthcare. I know, as a CNA, I would work a gazillion hours, sometimes 12-hour shifts back to back to back, sometimes having to get stuck at work, volunteering for shifts, knowing full well I should have been in somebody's bed sitting down somewhere, right? But I would keep going and keep going and keep going and keep going, and we would see that in other ways in other professions too. Okay, can you hear me now? Okay, great. So, um, you know, so we see that every day. We'll see that in community leaders where it's this go, 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 go. Where, yes, call me anytime. Call me. Oh, you can call me all time of night. And I'm available 24/7. No, you're not. You're not
Right.
available. When you
And
gonna sleep?
right. Boundaries much? Boundaries much?
Boundaries much, right?
Yes.
In the effort, again, doing good things. These aren't terrible things. These aren't horrible things. These are beautiful things. But it doesn't mean that in doing those beautiful things, we need to sacrifice ourselves, that we need to sacrifice our livelihood, our relationships in order to show up for other people, having those boundaries. And most of us, again, uh, we didn't have them. So we see that every day in that life where we are sacrificing everything, and leaving ourselves to drown either by ourselves in relationships or financially, showing up, giving financially, or allowing somebody to take advantage of us financially to the point where we just don't have, we don't even know how we gonna eat, you know How many of us have fallen into that? I know I can raise two hands and a foot.
Yep. Yep.
you know but that wasn't healthy or healing to me, definitely wasn't healthy or healing to my family, you know and it would leave me to drown, and I would see that play out for so many others too.
So, Cassandra, I know we only got like a couple minutes left, but can you, with something like that, because so many of us do that, you guys, every day. And again, some of it is just the labels that we wear, spouse, partner, mom, dad, caregiver, to our parents, healer, preacher, social worker, teacher. It's all the same. Hey, that rhymed. So, but how did you find yourself working your way out of that? Like, the tools that you learned.
Thank you. Some of the tools that I started using, the first one, and we've talked about this some, was learning to push through the comfort of no, the discomfort of saying no, rather. That was very hard to do. We hear it before no is a complete sentence and you can just say no, blah, blah, blah. But when you spent decades upon decades saying yes all the time, or, giving in to people even after you said no and allowing your boundaries to be pushed, it's a hard thing. And so there was literally a pushing through the discomfort of my saying no and holding myself accountable to that no, not going back and changing my mind. Even though, don't get me wrong, I would think about it. I would really think about it, not going back and changing my mind. So that was one of the first things that I started to do. The other thing, and I can't say this enough, is I had external help. I was in counseling, you know, and my therapist was working with me with CBT, so that was helping me with a lot of those thoughts that I've had about having to show up in spaces that I really didn't need to show up. It was helping me rework and kind of retrain my thinking, to not give in to just, run and run and run and run and run. That recognition that I was human first. And so getting that helped as well. The other thing, and we talk about this in recovery, about, we have to adjust our people, places, and things. And so starting to surround myself with others who had better boundaries, you know, helped me reinforce my own boundaries, right? Instead of kind of running from some of those people, because before they kind of scared me, to be honest, because they would be so stern in their boundaries, it almost felt offensive or felt cruel. But getting a better understanding that it wasn't offensive or cruel, it was that they had done the work themselves to understand what they had to do that was best for them. And so they could stand firm in their no, they could stand firm in their yes, even because they've done that work. And it's not to say that life never lifed or that there weren't things that happened, but for the most part, because they leaned into those boundaries, they leaned into that, it helped them out so much. And I was able to see those examples when I started to shift the people I was around, and pay attention. Like, you know how it is, you see somebody and they maybe they're wearing something that you're like, oh, I want to look like that. Oh, I want to dress. I started doing that with my healing. See how they are standing up for themselves? I need some.
Mhm. Yeah, it gives us confidence when we're around other people who are not afraid to stand in their truth, even if other people don't like it or there's commentary.
Mhm.
It's does build a sense of self-esteem, I think, in us. We're like, God, they can do it, and they can, walk away and hold their head up high, even if people don't like what they say. I have a friend like that. She really doesn't care, and I'm like, maybe it's because you're British. Because some she just has a certain attitude, like. And it's so amazing. It's so Joan Collins. It's so like, wow. It's beautiful to watch. And she can pull it off. And
Mhm.
she literally doesn't care. And I noticed being around her, it really started helping me do the same thing. Like, well, I gotta pull out my inner Lizzie, I practice once in a while. I'm still Anna. I'm still the marshmallow, but sometimes I get a little Lizzie in me. And so, but I've noticed that too. And I love that you bring that up. Surrounding ourselves, you guys, with with a different kind of person that can, help us build that confidence level. Because it is hard after years, your whole life saying yes, 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 to say no, no, no to somebody besides ourselves.
Absolutely.
Um, Oh my God. So you guys, it's 11 o'clock already. I can't believe we made it to number 5. Um, I want to thank all of you for being here. You guys are amazing. So Cassandra is actually going to be back with us again next week, and I think at least the week after, if not the whole month of December. We're going to be, I think closer to the end of the month, we're going to be doing some different topic, like a couple different topics, but let's keep going. We're going to make it through our list, you guys.
Yes.
So next Monday, Cassandra will be back. We will be starting with number 6. I love it. You guys are sending you big hugs tonight and so much love and comfort. And I love that you guys are chatting. I love that you're supporting each other. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for just choosing to spend your night with us. Cassandra, you are amazing. You're fun and knowledgeable and inspiring. And we so appreciate you like doing this and spending your time tonight with all of us.
Thank you so much, Anna. Thank you again for holding the space. I'm so glad to be here. It truly is a pleasure laughing with you and doing this work. And
Oh
thank you.
my God.
It's,
Yeah. And if you guys want to get a hold of Sandra as a life coach and any of her peer coach or whatnot, she is also, does her circles groups, but you can reach out to her privately through circles. And she has information in her bio as well. And she does several groups during the week and that you can join her groups too. She's lovely and so smart. And so sending you big hugs, you guys. Thank you so much. You guys have a good night.
thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good night.
Good night.